Welcome, everybody, to the Backstage podcast, Episode 9. We're almost to 10. We can have our 10-year anniversary. It'll be great. Um, Today on the podcast, I am joined with the homies. We got Ben Woida,
Hey
Cole
everybody.
Wright, and Sam Petersen. How y'all doing
Hola.
today?
Not bad, Dev. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah.
Yeah, as good as you can be.
Every answer of doing fine is with a huge asterisk on it.
I know.
Yeah.
Every time I've talked to one of my friends, because everyone's reaching out to everybody in these times, and they already were with the pandemic. But every single time, without fail, it's like, "How are you doing?" Everyone's always like, "Well, you know, that's it. You know, you know."
It really is, though. Right before we went live on the podcast, we were talking about how uh, doing the podcast every week, coming together for an hour at a time, just to talk with your friends and catch up and talk about issues. It's very therapeutic, in my opinion. I think it's great for me. I get to have some scheduledness in my life, which is something I miss because of the pandemic and the situation that we're all in. But having something scheduled, having something to look forward to is very, very uh it eases the
Refreshing.
mind. Yeah, it's refreshing. Yeah, definitely. Um, so I think we should today get a little. I don't even know if this is political, but social, and talk about everything that's happening in the world with George Floyd
Actually,
and the
everything is political today.
I was about
yeah,
to say,
um, and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything of the such. I'm not gonna rehash everything. I'm sure you guys can like watch the fucking news, but we're just gonna talk
Do we
about our
date it? Are
opinions
we
on
gonna
the
date this
topic.
podcast?
I'm sure you're
Yeah.
alive right now.
Yeah. We are 1 week and 1 day, I believe, past um, George Floyd's murder.
Yeah.
So
Um so everything happening in the world, I think there's a lot of problems with right now how media is handling situations, cuz each different news source you go to is a different story right now, and I think the biggest problem that I'm facing with the media right now is they're not separating uh the news stories. They're kind of covering it as one whole thing, and that everything in this story is connected. When I think, the rioters that are going out at night and busting windows and stealing a bunch of shit is a completely separate issue to the actual peaceful protest that's going on, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they are connected in a way that some of the media outlets are portraying them as. I think they're two completely separate incidents, and it should be treated as such. I think the big part of the riots are it's a lot of just people trying to survive because of the things that have happened in the past, you know,
I
month and a
think
half with the pandemic.
I think they are definitely somewhat related. It would be ignorant to say that they are completely separate events. But I do think there is a distinct difference between a peaceful protest and I believe the looting and rioting is happening at night as a subsequential cause of years of pain and nobody listens until you smash a fucking window.
Definitely, definitely.
I think there are people who take it to an extreme and a lot of people are looting not out of like I think there are a lot of assholes who are taking this extreme and we've all seen the meme of like the white people living out their Joker slash purge fantasies. And
God,
Yeah.
those people are real and they are doing that, which is horrible. But I think the chaos and violence that is ensuing after the peaceful protest is a direct correlation to the protests. I think
yeah. I
not
don't
in a
think
bad
you
way,
can
but
unlink them.
yes, I agree. That's what
And
I'm saying.
even in my
I don't
head, I
think it
think
should
you can
be.
separate some of the destruction from the looting, right? Because I
Yeah.
think we could all write off. Oh, excuse me. We can all write off the looting as like people given an opportunity and taking
Yes.
it, right? Those are very
Yeah.
opportunistic moments, um, and are separate from uh, I am a very white man, as are two of the other folk on this podcast. Um, so we have not had to live through, the plight of minorities in the United States, and but I can sympathize with the frustration of 400 years of bullshit and wanting to smash windows and, to the very far end, burning down an auto zone and burning down a police station in the city of Minneapolis. So like those are very extreme examples, but like sympathize I can with the desire to have that level of destruction. Do I think it's appropriate? Do I think it helps the cause? No, but after all of this time, I can totally understand of like what the fuck else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Right? You have to get your point across somehow. I don't think that's the right way to do it, but I can absolutely kind of understand the mindset of like something has to be done because we've been out here marching before and it clearly hasn't gotten the message across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The right way hasn't worked.
Right.
Which unfortunately leaves this way. I mean, me and Sam were talking about this the other day. The civil rights movement happened after this exact same thing that's happening now, rioting for 6 days. Like, rioting, I hate saying it, works. This is how you get people to listen who don't listen. I think looting is a separate thing. And again, we just covered this and we don't have to stay on this topic forever, but there are people who are using this as an opportunistic thing who, want an Nintendo Switch. There's a fucking GameStop. Let's go smash the window. The cops can't stop us now. But I think setting things on fire and burning buildings and marching and stuff like that makes people up on Capitol Hill start paying a little bit more attention to you and start actually passing bills and doing things that help people to try and put an end to this. Because otherwise, they're not going to listen. And that's been proven time and time and time and time and time and time again.
Yeah, the people are frustrated, man. They're angry.
Yeah.
They're angry that they're still living in a world that all of these problems exist in. And I don't know if it's still happening, but the rest of the world is backing the movement, We saw a protest in London, we saw a protest
Germany, France,
Belgium, Australia.
Yeah, everywhere.
All over the place.
Have you heard? Sorry.
I don't know if those are still ongoing. I only saw it break news the one day, so I cannot comment on that. But I'm glad that it's happening. I'm glad that it's a worldwide issue that people are trying to come together and solve.
And it's nice to see that. Like it's not just a problem recognized here. I'll take the ones in France as an example. They were both the protests in France were both in solidarity with some recent killings in the United States, as well as they have had multiple incidents, and I do not remember the name of the gentleman, but it was a black man who died in police custody, I think last year, and they were simultaneously marching in solidarity with us and over the death of that human being in France. So like this isn't isolated to the U.S. It's just we have a very loud bullhorn. Things that happen in the Western world in the U.S. like tend to be big message boards for the rest of the world.
Definitely. So yeah, I'm glad the rest of the world is backing us. The way that the first day that the protests were going on got pretty hectic. It got pretty violent.
Just as a frame too for people who are listening, and if we decide to listen to this 30 years from now and show my kids this, Dev lives in New York City, so he also is around a lot of it.
Yeah. So what they've done to try to combat the violence is they first issued a curfew at I think it was 11 p.m. 2 or 3 days ago, and now it's raised to 8 p.m. So 8 p.m. you're supposed to stay off the streets and all that, which is understandable, but also kind of fucking annoying because now like I'm kind of scared to go to like the bodega past 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And it's so fucking eerie because I live on 134th in Harlem, and all I see out of my window is just cops patrolling now. Like maybe
Yeah.
a car or two, but like that's it. After 8 p.m., dude, everything shuts down, and that's all you see, and it's weird. And I've definitely heard either fireworks or some kind of loud
That's
bang,
not
which
fireworks.
It's not fireworks.
yeah, which is sometimes it is, sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Living in Cincinnati and living in Clifton, you've learned the distinction because someone got shot in the back of my right outside my apartment in Cincinnati, so I was like, that was a gunshot. But then
It
also
happens a
like,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then also
It
like
also
people
could
just
be like tear gas canisters going off and things like of that nature.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Yeah.
That's
still,
what we're
like
saying it is.
police using force. Yeah.
That's what I think it is. That's the crazy part about living in Clifton right now too. Is myself and Sam live in Cincinnati, and there's been a lot of political activism specifically in this neighborhood, and we live very very close to downtown. And me and Sam will be playing video games every night, and I hear lots of loud pops and fire sirens or police sirens almost every night. It's
yeah.
pretty crazy.
Um, so like I kind of agree with the curfew as long as they say, like y'all can come back tomorrow, protest all day, but this is how we're going to
Mhm.
kind of keep order. It's like we're not going to
Yeah.
stop you from protesting. We're just trying to keep the city safer and stop crime from happening past this time. And then
And
there are
unfortunately, what's been happening here with the curfew is it's getting used as leverage. So roads are being blocked off so protesters can't leave.
Mhm.
Before it was 8 o'clock, we're up to 11 now. And then all just getting rounded up.
Yeah, and we've seen that in New York as well. A lot of the social media posts about protesting past curfew and protests in general, I think shed some light on the situation, but also you definitely can't just look at it and like throw your assumptions out, right? Um, there are definitely videos that I've seen that I'm like, this is complete bullshit and this is police brutality at its finest. But then also there
Yeah.
are some other videos that you have to look at it and kind of say like, there's probably another side to the story. Like we just got the video of the beginning of the this like argument ensuing into something more, but like we don't know what was happening for the past like 15 minutes. Um, so everything I'm watching
Wow.
on social media right now, I'm taking with a grain of salt, but I'm still like formulating my own opinions about it.
Yeah. In this situation, social media has been both a blessing and a curse, I would say. Um, in one instance, 6 Atlanta police officers are no longer police officers and have been, and some of them have had charges brought against them for video shot for social media because they tased the hell out of 2 college students in a car who were out past curfew and then pulled them out of their vehicles and really mistreated them. And those people deserve to be fired. But at the same time, I see all sorts of stuff that like is really chopped up clips and making wild assumptions about like what people are doing when it comes out later that like, oh, like this wasn't the exact situation. um and not it's a little both sidesing, but I think just in terms of like social media has been both a blessing and a curse.
It's like with
During this
anything,
time.
any kind of media, you have to know what to trust and
Hmm.
try to understand the whole story. For like, Rodney King was running from the police, but they also beat him within an inch of his life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that started the 92 riots. And here we are again. But you also, when you see something that is undeniably true and still don't know how to react, is
Hmm.
what's crazy to me. Like you see someone in full riot gear walking out into the street and putting a brick there before the protesters get there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's so much
Super sketch.
controversy too, which I want to pick Cole's brain about it a little bit, Mr. Conspiracy.
Oh,
But
God.
like,
Is
what
that
are
my
your
nickname?
thoughts?
Is that what you call me?
No,
Am
no,
am
no.
I your conspiracy
First,
theory friend?
first of all,
You are my
you
conspiracy
state it.
friend.
You state that you're the
Wow.
conspiracy tinfoil hat guy. First of
Wow.
They're
all.
not theories when they're true.
Yeah, I was about to say, dude.
But
That
like,
theory, not Alex Jones.
there's a ton of, I would guess, say evidence or whatever to say that like people are giving tools to the protesters to incite rioting, basically.
Yeah.
I've seen posts of pallets of like bricks just being like left on the side of the street, and another part of it is I think it was the San Francisco protest, maybe like Monday or Tuesday, but their social media was flooding. It's like, don't go to this protest. This is like a setup. Like, this is not. This is from like some.
This hasn't been organized by the Black Lives Matter movement.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There's been undercovers and neo-Nazis in the groups of people protesting who jump on cop cars and try to start panic.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
And
really
there's
looking forward. Oh, good.
I don't know if the undercover cops are doing that, but it is the people that have very different ideals.
Well, I mean, I think you would be ignorant to assume cops aren't trying to incite violence. If that, not all cops, and I don't mean that as a broad blanket statement or anything, but there have been several videos of cops spray painting videos or I mean, in Atlanta, there's that video of these dudes walking up to cops saying, "What are you doing?" and the cops are smashing their own windshields.
Yeah.
Like, and it's in my opinion, the reason they're doing it is because that gives them the excuse to use force to try and disperse a crowd. There's a crowd of 6,000 people. Obviously, if something turns bad very quickly for them, they're in a very bad spot. So they're kind of looking, in my opinion, looking for an excuse to be able to use force to squash the protest out as quick as possible.
So I have been very disappointed with some of the videos I have seen out of police departments coming out of this. There's one that really fucking horrifies me. I think it was out of Louisville, where an unmarked like gray pickup truck and some plainclothes officers like drive up really really fast into like a park
And
where there's
destroy
a
all of
tent
the.
and
Yeah.
there are milk jugs and like water jugs set up, and they roll up and start either smashing all the materials or tossing them in the back of the pickup truck and driving away. And like whoever the fuck ordered that to happen, like some serious like something needs to be done about that, because that is not the police out there, protecting those protesters. That is not the police out there like keeping the city safe. You are merely like taking things that people have prepped for when they, inevitably assume that they will be tear gassed, and just like taking their property and smashing it. Like that is not helping anybody or your relationship with that community. It is
Yeah.
so unhelpful. Now, some of the things I've seen like that I take with a grain of salt are like when I see the officers. I've seen videos of them like it looks like they're smashing windows when more stuff has come out after that, when these windows have already been smashed and they are just like clearing out the glass.
Yeah.
Like a lot of that is going on. I've seen tons of videos of people going, look, the cops are fucking like rioting themselves. No, that's not exactly what's happening. But yeah, I have been very disappointed to see, some of the actions of certain police departments through this whole
Yeah.
thing.
And we've seen that same thing with getting rid of supplies in New York. There was a video of a couple of officers just like emptying water bottles that have been placed around for first of all, like if you're going to be protesting too, it's like it's very important to have water, because most of the time during these protests, like the local stores and stuff are closed. Especially, we're also in a fucking pandemic, so none of that shit has reopened. But it's like
And
there's
you can't pop into a bar and grab a couple of
yeah.
water.
Yeah, and so it's very important for the safety of the people, and there have been multiple videos that really do warm my heart of officers giving protesters water and supplies, and protesters giving officers and water and supplies. You know, it goes both ways.
Has anyone given them a Pepsi? That has worked before.
I've told my Kendall Jenner that works.
Yes. I
and
don't know what we're doing. She fixed this.
I thought we were through this already. Where's the next commercial? Anyway, memes.
Yeah, but it's really nice to see through all the violence and the hate that there are still good things, you know. And that's kind of the thing that like warms my heart. Like for the past couple of days, I've just been definitely in a depressed rut, I would say, with everything going on in the world and how bad it seems. But then like these small videos that you see of like the kind acts that are happening throughout this, it really does warm my heart and gives me a lot more hope in humanity, you know.
I do not like seeing cops kneeling. That's kind of like showing off, given circumstances.
Yeah, I completely agree. But
probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah, there's that, but then there's also like the protesters are asking, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see
solidarity.
Solidarity and
if you want to show
some kind of
solidarity, don't
humanity.
kneel and then tear gas someone an hour later.
Oh, 100%.
That's a little 100%. Bit more.
100%.
You're kneeing means nothing if you're just going to turn around and tear gas citizens.
And like on that point, I've seen some stuff come out about basically anyone who is in the military cannot, even on their free time, cannot go protest.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of fucked up, because if they're not actively serving and if they have their own personal time, that's their choice. And
are you talking about people? Are you talking about people on base? Is that what you're talking about? There's, I would be hard pressed to believe that anybody who like is not currently on active rounds, like is not assigned to a base.
I don't
know.
I don't know all of this because I've been watching off social media, so I don't want to like push this too hard. But like there's a video I watched of a former army member crying his eyes out, saying like, please do not fight against our own people, you know. Wild. Which I think is a very, very important message. It's like, it shouldn't be Americans fighting Americans with use of military.
If we're gonna get really political, I mean, the concept of ordering troops to the streets, like one of the last times that happened was Eisenhower ordered U.S. Army members to Little Rock, Arkansas, to defend the black students who were going in like for their first day of school, and the governor of Arkansas had ordered National Guard out there to prevent that from happening. So Eisenhower overstepped and said, this like desegregation is federal and we will stand up for desegregation. Like that was one of the last times that you could do that. So the idea of, you know, ordering troops to the streets like for the very opposite of that message is
we might have slid back.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. And it's hard for me to understand that push because, and this might be like super ignorant, but military are told to trust their instincts in a field of battle, right? They're trained to go into war, and when you put people in that position / mindset, I'm not saying like everyone's like that, but it's a mentality thing, right? You've been training in the army for how long? How many terms have you served, and how much combat have you seen, right?
And they're a lot of times taught to shoot first, ask questions later, because you're in a war zone.
Exactly. And I think putting people in this situation against civilians of your own country is very sketchy, you know?
Yeah.
It's
so I mean you could be blunt about it. Like the army is trained to kill people, right? Like that's why we have an army, right?
Yeah.
And
they go out and they usually fight other armies.
Right, when you send them out, they like the only thing that they can see mentally on the other side are the enemy, right? That is how it's all structured.
Right.
Now, National Guard is a little bit different, but these um, you are trained and you have officers, you have commanding officers above you, but in the end it's you against the enemy. That is how the army works. That is how the Marines work. um and so the idea of putting them on the street against US citizens is we're that would be teetering on like police state kind of shit.
Right. Yeah.
And it's also Donald Trump trying to flex.
Yeah, which I think is the complete wrong move, 100%.
Yeah, it's look what I can do. Look how I'm going to stop you.
Yeah. And it's so sad to see that, at least to me, it feels like there's no empathy coming from him for this situation,
There is zero.
Like, yes, at first he was, saying like when the riotings or when the looting starts, the shooting starts and all that crap. But then he came out later and he was like, we are defending your right to peaceful protest, blah, 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 blah. And then, but we are deploying this army or the National Guard and this and that, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, the
But
guy
it's
is
just,
using this as a fucking photo op. Like, it's horrifying.
yeah, and then like clearing out protesters to go take a photo with the fucking Bible, dude. Like, why?
Yeah.
That's not what we need right now. What we need is you to understand the people's issues, to hear their voice, and you won't even give them the satisfaction of that. Like he just like, you know what I mean?
I mean, just today, when he announced, like, he held a press conference over, the U.S. just yesterday announced, like, the job numbers are looking better. So unemployment went down. It's still at
Mhm.
like 13%. But in his speech, he fucking used George Floyd's name and said something along the lines of like this is a great day for George Floyd. Like the economy is coming back. Like blah blah blah. Like clearly being so unbelievably tone deaf about the entirety of this situation. Like fuck
Yeah.
you. Like the job numbers wouldn't have made George Floyd happy. Being alive today would be a blessing for George Floyd.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. It's so bizarre that it's 2020 and there's no sympathy coming from the most powerful person in the world in his own country against his own citizens. But I want to bounce back to this this police brutality topic. There's a couple of videos that I saw of police like pulling down face masks or taking off the protesters' PPE and then spraying them down
and then
with
macing
pepper
them.
spray.
Ugh.
Yep.
It's like, why?
Earlier in the podcast, I just said, "Oh wow," because this girl that went to my school district, I didn't know her too well, but a bunch of my friends are friends with her, just died from getting pepper sprayed in Columbus. She was peacefully protesting, like on her knees, and these cops came up and just pepper sprayed her and her group, and she has asthma and it triggered an asthma attack, and she died. And I just saw it on it wasn't Complex, it was I think it was just like a meme page, but they just posted a picture of her and like her story and said she died in Columbus
Whoa.
hospital. Yeah, I was just like, oh god, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Had like 200,000 likes or some crazy shit.
I don't think the police understand the fact that yes, it's quote quote not lethal.
But it can definitely
They
kill.
actually they so just a little bit of terminology. They used to call stuff less than lethal or non-lethal.
Mhm.
They are now all the most recent terminology I've been hearing is called less lethal. So like
Less
still
lethal.
understand,
Okay.
yeah, and it's still like doesn't change the fact that it can really hurt people, but the terminology is changing.
Okay.
So they are using like there is an understanding at least at some higher up level that like this stuff is still dangerous. A rubber bullet in the right spot can still do a lot of damage and kill you. Mace, used in a certain way can still really hurt people.
Tasers too.
Mhm.
There's a statistic somewhere that I saw a very long time ago, very very long time ago, but it was like tasers can also exacerbate heart conditions, I think, when you get tased, which has caused to a lot of incidents. Damn, I wish I remember that statistic. I'm gonna look it up here in a second.
Yeah, man, do some googling.
Right
But
shit down.
but yeah, and like
Am I
there's
the only one who brought notes to the podcast? Just me?
well, Ben, I think you were one of the.
No, I'm kidding. I didn't bring any notes, but
No. I think you were very, very, very well informed. And
tried
you
to
always
be.
have been. You always have been. Most of the time, I think when we were living together, I would always come down to you for information and be like, you'd be like really mad about this one topic. I'm like, tell me about it, because I have no fucking idea.
Boy, and you know I love to hear myself talk about it. So.
But yeah, so like with the tasers, with the rubber bullets, it's like there's a lot of postings going on of people getting shot with rubber bullets like in the face, and there's a couple of incidents where they got shot in one of their eyes, and the rubber bullet fractured their skull and basically made them go blind in one eye. You know, there was a
Yeah, man, it's real shit.
yeah, and I saw one other post where the correct way to use rubber bullets is you're actually supposed to shoot them at the ground and let them bounce, so it loses a lot of its velocity, and it's used to disperse crowds. And it's not directly to it's not supposed to directly
Around
be
and hit
used.
a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're not supposed to shoot it right at somebody's center of mass.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Shit's just fucking crazy. But yeah, I think it comes down to the Black Lives Matter movement, and then also just policing and police brutality as a whole, right?
Yeah.
There's a great YouTube video or YouTube channel called Audit the Audit. Let me make sure I'm quoting that right here. Audits. Yeah, it's called Audit the Audit, right? And it's basically you know, people nowadays, anytime they get pulled over or anytime they have an incident with police, they start recording, and police have been doing the same with body cams. But this channel basically takes these recordings from both sides, from the quote detainee and the police side, and they go through and they explain the laws of what's happening in the video. So like if you're being illegally detained, like it's like, yes, this person was in the right, that they were being illegally detained and they had no need to show, you know, ID or whatever for walking on the street, this and that, blah 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 blah. It's a really great YouTube channel. I've learned so much about it. But in this, and then at the end of every episode, they rate the officer's encounter, just like school, A through F, and then the person who is, you know, getting stopped or whatever. And it's kind of crazy to see that in the eye of the law, we have a lot more rights to how do I say this? In the eyes of the law, we have a right to stand up to.
Yeah. You have a lot more protections as a citizen.
Yeah.
You know, to keep a hold of your privacy, that a lot of people understand that they have.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the big things it's like that I see in these videos is the fact that like if you're very calm about it and you're like and you're defending yourself, the officers get very, very defensive, and then it just kind of escalates, you know. Which is wild.
Nobody likes to be told that they're wrong, especially when they're usually the one in a position of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But definitely go check it out. It's a great channel. Learn about protecting yourself and your rights. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, totally. We're kind of dancing around a bigger topic that like none of us are really qualified to have.
Yeah.
But I just want to state like there is a huge debate that I seem to be getting in with people over how much power the police should have in general, which is a very like touchy subject of like, like why do we have police? What is the purpose of a police department? What should the police's job be during protests? What powers should they have um, to disperse crowds when it comes to, the First Amendment and freedom of assembly and things like that? That like those limits are really being tested right now, and a lot of misgivings are really being put, in the spotlight, in this age of everybody recording everything all the time. So, like, I think
Yeah.
that is a wider debate that is happening in the world, which is
Yeah.
like one of the crazy, like some of the craziest film that I've seen out of this has been like how press have been gone after, and I don't think it has been like intentional. It's not like, I can't see a police commander going, go arrest that CNN crew. Like it's not like that, but just the pure amount of like confusion and like police just not knowing what to do and are doing the like all of the wrong things, shooting
Mhm.
rubber bullets at a at a German news crew, like full on arresting the CNN crew that I'm sure everybody has seen.
Yeah.
Um, there was also an Australian film crew that got I don't remember if they got detained or if they got rubber bullet or something. But like everyone is like, we are press. Like we are not we are just here to record. We are allowed to be here. And just seeing like police departments absolutely flub all of that is fucking wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that sorry, go ahead, Tim.
any police department is necessary, and I don't want to say is a necessary evil, but they get the power that everyone agrees upon.
Right. They are supposed to be enforcing the laws that have been agreed upon by the people. Right? Like
Yeah.
that is the purpose of a police department. And as you guys are aware, as the people on the podcast may not be aware, like I have a lot of feelings about this because like both of my parents are in law enforcement. My mother works for the Department of Correction, the state of Indiana, and my father has been a police officer in the city of Indianapolis for upwards of 25 years now. So like that is the family that I grew up in, very law enforcement based. um so a lot of times in my past, like when I was a kid, I just unknowingly sided with police in like every fucking situation. And now as I've grown, it's been a lot of really taking a look at everything,
Mhm.
and trying to like pick apart what I know is my own bias, and really look at, situations in as true a light as possible. Um, yeah, it's been a challenge, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of where my references are coming from.
I mean that's kind of why I like talking to you about politics and other social events, you know.
Yeah.
You come with the mindset of gathering as much information as you can and then determining a conclusion from that, you know. Like I definitely think that you look at a lot more sources and are a lot more involved than I am, and coming to you for knowledge slash and your opinion is something like I take very, very, very highly, you know.
I appreciate that, Dev.
Because
Those words mean a lot.
yeah, just because you've come from, you understand both sides of the argument, you know.
Yeah, I come from a very weird background on this.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's kind of, you're right. The conversation of what is the police's power, what is their job, what is their role in all of this something that something that I think is not going to be a conversation that we have at this current moment in time with everything else happening. Like it is that conversation is happening, but it's going to take a lot longer for it to
Nothing
conclude.
about this is simple.
Yeah, and that's the problem too. That's why I think that's why a lot of people are so frustrated. Is like they've been protesting for so long, and yet we still don't have an answer. You know, and there's no simple solution to it.
Right.
There's no like, oh, this is what we're gonna do and it's gonna work.
To
I
quote
definitely
unquote fix policing, it's not an overnight, right? So like it takes a lot. And this kind of gets me to a point where like I wanted to hop on a high horse a little bit and talk about this because I've been seeing this going around social media and like in the lists of demands, and I even saw it as a tweet from the Black Lives Matter DC group, and it really just like got to the heart of what I don't think like is one of the issues in this conversation, right? Like I would be anybody who says that there's not a lot of inherent problems in policing is just blowing smoke. Like they don't like that is just a very ignorant statement. Um, but the phrase that really ticks me off that I've been seeing recently is defund the police or drastically cut funding to police departments. And the reason I say that is like that kind of blanket statement sounds to me like you are treating police as the enemy and treating them as like this is like like almost a group that like should not be funded, like needs way less funding. Now that does not mean I am for militarizing the police, right? I think the flow of military style weaponry and vehicles to police departments like is a problem. And when you set cops up in, crazy riot gear and super armored vehicles, they're going to get in that mindset like we talked before about um like seeing who is out there on the streets as the enemy, and that is not
Hmm.
helpful to anybody. The cops are supposed to be out there to protect the community, both um those who are using their right to protest and to protect the businesses from people who may mean to do them harm. um but without funding you can't get any of the training that you were screaming for, right? You can't get the bias training, you can't get the de-escalation training, you can't hire more cops, right? Because tired, overworked, stressed out cops get more complaints against them and cause more problems, right? And
Hmm.
you can't set up systems in police departments to log and track complaints and like to root out your bad actors, right? You can't do any of that without funding, right? So the idea of defunding city police departments cuts their ability to train, cuts their ability to do community outreach, and cuts their ability to police themselves. So
I
Yeah.
don't
yeah,
I don't think anybody's asking for a complete defunding of the police
I
department. I
like
just think
Unfortunately, that's been the tagline.
I have
yeah,
seen
I
that
agree.
over and over and over.
But I mean, when you look at the wealth distribution of how much typical police departments get, you think they use all of that budget? Like I'm looking right now, the general fund for the 2020 proposed budget in Columbus, because my friend actually posted this and I just pulled it up while we were talking about it. So the general fund for the 2020 proposed budget for Columbus, Ohio, the education department is slated to get $6,661,910. The health department is getting $26 million, and the police department is getting $359,970,420.
I
And that
guess
doesn't seem a little fishy?
listen, I don't know like about the books, right? I'm not going to go out and say that, I think cops are like embezzling or like misspending all of those funds, but it takes a lot, to run any organization. I can't argue over, I don't know the books. I would love to see an itemized list as to where all that stuff goes, and I bet you could find it. That'd be worth something actually looking into.
$325 million more than a health department?
I don't know how many people does the police department like pay for over the health department, like just in terms of people numbers. Like I don't know how many. Like, do you know how many people are hired by the health department versus number of cops in the city of Dayton?
I don't, but if I had to guess, $325 million is a little bit excessive.
But I think what Ben is bringing up is it's the implication of your stance being defund the police. And
Yes.
while that is an issue, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But what it makes it sound like is that they should have no money.
I
I
think
guess
they should have money and they should have a budget, but I think the budget should be looked at a little closer.
sure.
$325 million.
I am for the auditing of every fucking purchase that happens, government wide. But
Yeah.
especially in police departments, yes, all of that stuff should be looked at. But the idea of defunding the police and like asking them to do like all of this training that they need to get in order to do their jobs better, like there's just those two worlds do not coincide.
Yeah. Like I hate that I'm not informed enough, and I didn't do prior like research to this podcast. This we kind of were like, oh yeah, we should talk about everything happening in the world. I wish I could pull up sources right now, but I think the FBI made a statement that they do not have the records to do an investigation of uh, police departments for 10 years because they don't have the information, right? There's no records. So it's like it's hard to make a case when you can't get the information out, which like
Yes.
I think is another thing about the police department is that I don't 100% know how it works, but I think everything is still based off of paperwork. I think like hard paper, uh, and isn't like a
A lot of
digitized
government
system.
agencies are like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
right.
super underfunded. You know, my mother at the DOC is working with, you know, computers that were built in '95. Like, and
Yeah,
it's not,
yeah.
Advising things that should be.
Say that again, Sam. Sorry.
Things that really should be online or automated by computers just aren't.
Yeah.
A lot of government agencies, not just police.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've talked about before on the podcast of unemployment and how you still have to make phone calls and how it's not very inept for the user, and government websites trying to navigate them and find information is the navigation is just horrible, you know? And it's just because those websites haven't been updated in years and years and years, but I think that's a very good start, you know, of
it blows my mind in this country that there is not a national database of every, uh, you know, every time the police shoot and kill somebody.
yeah.
Right? There is not a
Yeah.
national database. Every statistic that you see is one that has been gathered by like big journalistic organizations going out and finding every story in every city and putting all those numbers together because there isn't a national database.
Yeah, which I think
Which is
I think
bananas.
is which I think is sorry, Sam, go ahead.
You have a city department, a county department, highway patrol, and then sometimes smaller towns. Like we have neighborhoods that have their own sets of cops. So that's 4 different people you have to call in 6 square miles.
Yeah. And I think that's I think that's a step in the right direction is updating the databases that way we can actually, and first of all, I'm pretty sure it's all public knowledge, right? If it's within the police system, which is why reporters and stuff can get what they can get. But I think updating the database system and having a running record of all incidents, all reports, all of the complaints filed, you know, like then you have statistics, that then you have evidence, then you can look into cases, right? And it's a lot easier to find this information. It's a lot easier to track this information. I believe one of the police officers involved in George Floyd's murder had like, you know, 12 complaints against him, and 18, thank you. And I think there was one about unnecessary show of force or something too. That was
Well, he also shot a Native American man like 2 years ago, just like
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much the exact same thing.
actually that's what I'm trying to refer to. Thank you, Cole.
Yeah, no problem.
And it's like why was this never investigated? Well, there's no record of it. There was no public record of it, you know. If you
Well-
wanted to go find that out, you would have to go search for yourself.
Another issue was I was just listening to, you guys should listen to The Daily by
Love the Daily.
yeah, The Daily's awesome. They pretty much just released this thing of why it's so hard to track these things, and they had a whole podcast that is like 45 minutes. And I didn't really think about this, but I realized the reason that so many of these things go under the rug is because nobody polices the police. The police is its own policing force.
If you looked at
So-
the record, like the police report from the incident, and there was no video, none of those cops would be in jail right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
horrifying what they wrote up in the police report and
I
how
think-
it absolutely misrepresents what happened that day.
I think it would be really, really interesting. I saw a call for this, but I don't know if it's actually gaining any traction or anything. But instating a new department to check the police force that is not made up of officers,
So people that are like
lawyers,
not involved in
and-
law enforcement in any
Yes.
way,
Yeah, like no
like a
cop.
federal agency.
I don't know. Again, I didn't read about it too much, but I just saw
Okay.
a couple people talking about how it would be interesting if there was a department to actually have checks and balances like the rest of the United States system has. That
Yeah.
someone would check the cops. There shouldn't be just free reign there.
Yeah,
But
I
and
think good.
I think the problem, I'm going to refer back to this YouTube channel, Audit the Audit. A lot of these videos end with if they're like really fucked up, it all ends in the people taking the police to court, right? The problem with that is a lot of people don't have the money to do that, you know?
Yep.
A lot of people don't have the resources to do that. And that's kind of where it comes down to, because I think that's the way it's supposed to happen. That's the way we are supposed to police the police, but the process for it is so long and and extraneous on the person that they don't, most of the time they don't believe they're going to win the case is a big thing. And then also like the cost on them is, what is that going to do to their livelihoods when they come out of it? Especially if they don't win the case. If they don't win the case, they have to pay all these lawyers, all these fees, all the court fees, So like that, I think that's a big deterrent of.
Along those lines, another YouTube channel, it's Legal Eagle. This was a video having nothing to do with this, but it happened a long time ago. How America's judicial system or like court system is set up versus how the UK system is set up. And in the UK system, if you choose to bring a case to court, if you win, you don't have to pay anything. Like your lawyer's fees are gone and are automatically paid by the other side, right? So,
Like the
but
Halloween challenge, they're only free if you actually finish them.
right. So, like it's designed to, not be cost prohibitive for people who believe they have a case, right? And if lawyers, lawyers who hop on that case, if it's a good case, they're not going to have to worry about not getting paid. But in the US, it's a cost prohibitive system where no matter what, even if you win, you're still going to have court fees, which I think is super screwed up and is not how we should be incentivizing, people to take stuff to court.
Yeah, and sometimes the settlement, it depends on the case. It's a case-by-case basis, right? But sometimes the settlement is not enough to cover those,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
really screwy.
that's the problem, How are we supposed to take it to court as me being an unemployed lighting designer or whatever?
I knew this was about theater.
I know. This is how we tie it back. They're right here. But being an unemployed in a pandemic with almost no fucking money, if something were to happen to me, how am I supposed to fight back, So I think there's a lot of reform that needs to be done, and it's just like, where do we start, How do we start fixing this issue? And it's not going to just be like the problem. What I think I have is with all the prior situations that we've had and that we've been fighting for all these years, it's like it always comes down to like, oh, like they change one thing, right? One or two things, and then they think it's over, but it's not over, and it's hard because when everyone's fighting for something and they think when they get some kind of I don't want to say acknowledgement, but solidarity, I guess. It kind of the fierceness behind the movement kind of disappears a little bit,
Unfortunately, this will not be the last time that we see
No.
images like we have seen, and it's gonna be a fight. It has continued to be a fight. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, nothing
Yeah.
about this is simple, and we're gonna be in this fight for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So,
Um.
and
We
I guess
got.
that's not to say give up, but like keep fighting that fight. It's a
Yeah.
fight. It's a fight worth fighting. There was a great sign that I saw somebody holding up that said, "We did not come this far just to get this far."
Right.
Which is like, you know, gotta keep pushing to keep doing the right
Yeah.
thing.
Do you guys want a little bit of good social news?
Yeah. Let's end on a good note.
The Standing Rock tribe just won their federal court case.
Against the pipeline people?
Yeah, against
No
the
shit.
pipeline.
Oh, we love that.
We do
Yep.
love that.
That's awesome.
And it's been this case started in 2016, and I'm just skimming over this article to make sure I'm not misinterpreting a headline. But yeah, they won, and
Sweet.
this is
Love
they said
that.
this is the beginning of the end for that pipeline project. And there's quotes from the lawyers for the Dakota Pipeline from the Army Corps of Engineers that were trying to call out, why are you trying to have this court case right now during a pandemic? We don't want to meet in person.
Aha.
Yeah, the tribe stuck with it and said, yes, we're having this court case, and they won.
Hell
Yeah.
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 Nice.
I
We
like
love
to
it
hear
when
that.
city organizations like go, no. This is happening. Like
Yeah.
you can't use bullshit excuses.
Yeah.
Love that.
We got 3 more minutes. Anyone want to have anything
Oh my
closing?
good god. We've gone on for so long.
Oh,
Or like
dude.
it went by so fast. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a podcast recommendation if anybody wants to like get freaked out for a minute.
Go for it.
Uh, yeah. I first listened to this podcast in early 2019 when it came out. And I just re-listened to it all again because some shit is really, really, really ringing true. It's kind of horrifying. It's called It Could Happen Here. It is a podcast about the possibility of a second American Civil War, not in a like true like two sides kind of scenario, but in a more realistic like insurgency. You've got right wing extremists and some left wing like radicalist groups, like duking it out in cities and farmland across America. And it is a fascinating listen because in the first episode he lays out like some of the beats that we would need to hit to get to that point, and they were like mass unemployment due to like a massive economic downturn and like big protests in the streets over a very divisive topic. And you're like, I just re-listened to it all and just went, oh god, like we're getting closer and closer to the 2020 election, and it's
Did
just
you
like tension is turning up.
Did you see what the Washington Post just released? This entire article from this former CIA agent whose job was to monitor foreign countries for downfall,
Insurrection? Oh
for literal downfall.
no.
And he literally was just like, "This is terrifying. I've been trained to do this for 20 years, and what I'm seeing in America is actually horrifying. I have seen this in Syria. This is what Muammar Gaddafi did. This is what, like, exactly what is currently happening is what happened in every other country before countries collapsed."
Whew.
Mm,
Yeah, that's kind of horrifying, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, it could happen here. A very good listen.
All right.
I want to shout out if anyone knows the words. If anyone knows Rooster Teeth, and then Achievement Hunter, off topic podcast number 236. Very, very, very good and informative. Not on all the things that are happening around the world and in the United States, but on a personal level of self responsibility. I'm gonna sum up just a little bit here, but basically when Achievement Hunter and Rooster Teeth were founded, it was the beginning of the internet, and you know, me growing up with the internet, I'm sure all of y'all growing up with the internet is ignore the haters, right? Ignore the hate, ignore all of this comments and how basically that is the wrong standpoint of the internet and social media and how we should speak out and try to understand all the problems happening in the world, you know? And I think I just want to leave with this message is we are human beings. We are one people and we need to care for each other and love each other. And if you don't necessarily agree with somebody else's opinion, it is definitely worth the conversation to understand the perspective of someone else, understand where they're coming from, understand where their background is coming from, and hopefully try to have a conversation to make a change. So, yeah, love thy neighbor. Stand
Talk to each
strong.
other.
Yeah, talk to each other,
Love that
basically.
they talk to each other. I would also
You
like
know.
to say, if anybody's listening to this, please donate, please protest, please do what you feel is appropriate in these times, but do something.
Definitely, yeah. Make your voice heard. Cool. Sorry, it was kind of. I don't think it was a heated podcast. I think it was just a lot of information, a lot of frustrations. For me, I've been wanting to talk about this for so long with some people. You know, I've been talking
You're
with
alone.
like, what's up?
Nothing. Sorry, keep going.
uh, and I think I've talked to Sam and Cole about this of how I've wanted to talk about this for a really long time. But it's very nice to gain perspective on the world, see others' viewpoints, and yeah, I don't know, just talk about it. So thanks for joining the Backstage podcast. We'll be back next Friday at 3 o'clock. Hope to see you all there. Thank you.